Hello, and today I'm going to show you how to make this autumn inspired cake with a handmade pumpkin topper. The topper isn't edible, but you can make it edible if you want, and I'll explain later. So first I took a batch of vanilla batter and took out about 4 or 5 scoops, and I changed that to chocolate batter. So I've got 2 different batters for one cake. Once that's all mixed in, I took 5 6-inch circular pans and I lined the base with parchment and floured and buttered the sides, and I evenly distributed the vanilla batter into each pan, just again using the same ice cream scoop. And once that was all used up, I went on to my chocolate batter and put a couple of spoonfuls into the vanilla batter, just randomly swirled it about. Once that was complete, I then took a knife and swirled it through so that it made it into a marble effect, so that when you cut into it you'll get 2 different types of cake, and it's delicious. So once that was cooked, and that took about 15 to 18 minutes, I used my vanilla buttercream, which there's recipes below, and built up the cake with a layer of cake and then a layer of vanilla buttercream. Spread it evenly as you can so that it keeps the cake relatively straight, and then put the next cake layer on. And I made some chocolate buttercream. Again, there's some recipes on my channel, and I put a little bit of reddy dye in it and a little bit of black in there, just to give it a bit more of a, I don't know, it looked a bit more autumnal to me because it sort of reminded me of a leaf. It's not showing up too red on the screen, but it was a little bit redder. So spread that about evenly, and then add your next cake layer, and continue going until all your cake is used up. And you can see the nice swirly chocolate and vanilla there as well. Okay, so once that was done, I then gave the entire cake a crumb coat on the sides and the top, just to seal in all the crumbs, ready for the next stage. I didn't put the cake in the fridge for this particular one. You can do if you want, if you find it easier, but it really wasn't necessary. I then took the bag of vanilla icing and just literally done a straight line from top to bottom with it, and then the same with the chocolate buttercream, and just kept alternating vanilla and chocolate until you've made it all the way around. I liked it because it wasn't particularly neat, and that's how I wanted it. I didn't want it to be all precise. I wanted it to actually look like someone at home had made it. So just keep on going until you've completed your entire cake side. And then once that was done, I took a piece of acetate and just dragged it up the side to take off any excess, and in between each sort of scrape up I wiped off any excess buttercream. But again, to me it looked quite nice when it wasn't absolutely perfect. But you know, you can try and get it as neat as you want it, depending on what kind of style you like. Okay, and once all that was complete and you've been all the way around, you then go on to the next stage, which is making the ganache. I made it with some obviously warmed double cream, and I think these were called rainbow drops or something, rainbow chocolate drops, and they were a black colour. And normally I'm not a massive fan of coloured chocolate, but these were actually all right. They weren't too gross at all. So yeah, I used those until I got the consistency I liked, and then I put the ganache in a piping bag, and as you can see, just popped it straight on the top of the cake and let it drizzle down the edges, and helped it out if it wasn't quite going where I wanted it to go. And then when I was happy with how that looked, I then went on to the top, and I just used a Wilton 1M tip and the leftover vanilla and chocolate buttercream and done random splodges and swirls at different heights all over the top of the cake, so it looked a bit, I was going for sort of, I don't know, messy pile of leaves kind of look, I guess. If you have to use your imagination for that, but you know, you get what I mean. And then after I'd done that, I just took the contrasting white buttercream and randomly put little splodges everywhere, and that's a little tiny star tip I had. Now the topper, which I'm going to make next, if you want to, you can use Rice Krispie treats for the middle, but I had a styrofoam ball, so I was going to use that instead. So all I done was I took a knife and then I carved out, which will be the top's centre hole of the pumpkin, and kept working on that until I was happy. You'll see eventually I changed knives because this knife was just ridiculously blunt, so it wasn't easy to do. And then I cut off the bottom of the ball to make it flat, and then each side, or not that a circle has sides, but each sort of I don't know, opposite corner, opposite edge, I made indent slices to replicate the bumps of a pumpkin. And when I was happy with that, I then took some orange fondant and covered the entire styrofoam ball. I just lightly dabbed water all over it as well, so just using my hands, got it as best I could into all the grooves. And the fondant that's gathered at the bottom, I just cut all the excess off of that because you don't need the whole thing to be totally covered. And then using some fondant tools, you can see here I'm just doing the top circle and then marking in a few more grooves around the outside. And again, it doesn't have to be, you don't want it to be, well, I didn't want it to be super smooth because pumpkins just aren't, or at least the ones I buy aren't. So I wanted it to be a bit more natural looking. So keep on going until you're happy. And then using some black food dust, I sort of painted into the grooves and edges and anywhere that perhaps some dirt might get, or you know, there might be a shadow cast or anything like that, just to bring it to life a bit more. So keep on going with that until you're happy. And then just to add the final touches, I took a tiny piece of brown fondant and stuck that on using a little bit of veg fat with into the centre, and then just darkened that up as well. And then the same with some green fondant, I just rolled out some little tendrils and stuck them down too. And then once I was happy with the amount I had on, I used the black food dust again and just dusted them lightly over just to give them a bit more depth as well. Okay, and that's pretty much it for the topper. So once you're completely happy with that, it's literally just a case of placing it on top of the cake. And it's nice and light as well, so it doesn't sink down into the cake, so it needs no supports. I then took some orange sprinkles, sort of look like sort of crystally orange sugar really, and sprinkled that around the edges. And then some tiny little pumpkin sprinkles and dotted them all over. And once you were happy with all of those, I then took some little sort of black sugar crystally bits as well and sprinkled them over. And that was it, cake complete. So I hope you like this one. To me it looks autumnal, I hope you agree. It's relatively simple to make and I hope you give it a go. So thanks ever so much for watching and catch you next time. Bye!